Here with me now, Louisiana Congressman, House Minority Whip Steve Scalise. Steve, good to see you as always. How do you see it?
Well, morning, Dagan. And I agree with the president that we need to start reopening the economy safely. You're seeing it happen all across the country now. We understand that the disease is still out there. And I will tell you, I'm seeing revolutionary changes that are being made. Also, I'm seeing some revolutionary breakthroughs in science. And when you talk to some of these heads of these major drug companies about the things that they're doing and the drugs they're testing to come up with both cures, therapies, and a vaccine, I feel very confident in where they're headed. But I also know that people are aware of this disease, and they're also aware of the other challenges that are out there by not leaving. I've talked to so many medical experts that are concerned about the people that aren't getting proper health care checkups, that aren't getting their cancer treatments or their mammograms, and what kids are doing, not getting their immunizations, and how that could cause a measles outbreak. So we need to make sure that we're looking at all of this, and we're helping safely reopen and sharing the protocols as we're seeing each state having different levels of success.
I know the Wall Street Journal has written about this, that scientists are looking at ways to prevent exponential growth in the virus again after the lockdowns are lifted, focusing on those super spreader events like, in New York City, keeping the subways open too long, or not implementing any kind of distancing or throttling the traffic on the subways until it was literally too late, or protecting those who are most vulnerable, most at risk, like nursing home patients, which again, New York State failed to do, actually putting those elderly people in harm's way by forcing COVID positive patients back into the nursing facilities without even allowing those facilities to test them for whether they were still infected.
Yeah, clearly those mistakes have been well documented. And again, look, we're Americans, we're smart people. People can see what worked well. People can see what didn't work well. And as we get back out there again, you're seeing people being a lot more cautious. And again, we know the vulnerable populations, they need to take extra precautions. But people also say, give me the opportunity to go out and live my life. There are a lot of other risks we take every day. And yet, with car accidents and all the other things that could go on in your life, you go out and you live your life in a smarter way and a safer way. But we also know the cost if you keep businesses shut in for much longer. There are a lot of businesses that aren't coming back already. There are a lot that are teetering on the brink, and we need to get people back out again and get confidence up that people can leave their houses, and that's slowly coming around. But this idea that we just will shut in until there's a vaccine, that's just not realistic. And so I think most states are recognizing that. Most people are recognizing that.
Speaking of aid, more money, fiscal stimulus, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin signaling that more may be necessary. He says that there is a, quote, strong likelihood that Congress will have to pass another package. Clearly, Nancy Pelosi trying to be relevant past that $3 trillion package, but there's a lot in there, like a tax cut for the rich by removing the cap on state and local tax deductions that Republicans did not and will not get on board with. But what shape do you think an ultimate package does take, Congressman?
It took a lot to get agreement on the things that we've already passed, especially the CARES Act and the Paycheck Protection Program, some of the relief that's working incredibly well. There's a lot of talk about continuing to make improvements to things like paycheck protection to have it have more flexibility for the reality of where we are today. It was passed when it was anticipated that would only be a few weeks that maybe a restaurant would be closed, and then when they'd open up again, their customer base would come back. Well, now you're seeing as people are opening up, they can only have 25% capacity. So the bill didn't anticipate that. There's a talk of making some changes there. But in terms of this thing, Pelosi showed just how far left they've gone, where her next idea of a relief package is bailing out failed states that had deficits prior to COVID. That's not going to happen. They opened up the bill for hundreds of billions of dollars to be available for people that are here illegally, which makes no sense when you think about families who are struggling and businesses who are well established that are barely hanging on or closing, to say we're going to turn that money over to people illegal, and changing voting laws to open up the door for voter fraud. What world are they living in where that's their priority instead of helping families and businesses get reopened.
Kelly?
Hi, Congressman. Kelly Torrance here. You know, the response to this pandemic has just been devastating. We have 38 million Americans out of work now. 44% of Americans in a poll said that someone in their household had lost income because of this. And I think it means we need to look at what happened and how this happened. You're the top Republican on the House's coronavirus task force. I understand that Democrats have been blocking you and your committee from investigating what China did and how it covered up its really just disgusting response to what happened in Wuhan.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. You know, we've been pushing, and all the Republicans on the subcommittee that I'm leading on the Republican side have been saying, you know, while they're trying to just bash the president every day and focus on the 2020 election, we've been saying, look, let's be helping families get back on track and get businesses reopened, but let's also be focused on holding China accountable. We all know the role they played in this. It started in Wuhan. The Chinese Communist Party hid this from the world. President Trump wanted our medical experts to go into China at the very beginning when we were hearing things that were going on. We didn't know anything for sure because they wouldn't let us know. The Chinese Communist Party stopped medical experts from coming in to China, and then they lied to the world about what was going on, the human-to-human contact. Oh, by the way, the World Health Organization was an able and willing party in that lie, and the head of WHO, Tedros, we've called for him to be brought in before our committee and testify about why they were lying and saying that, oh, you can't spread it from human-to-human contact, when there were examples in other countries that it could actually be done that way. And then they were critical when the president said, we're not going to let people come in from China. He put the flight ban in place, and you had people like Pelosi and Joe Biden criticizing him, but you also had the Chinese government and the WHO criticizing him, and it turned out the president was right there. Why aren't we holding them accountable? Because they're opening those wet markets again, where all of this started. As crazy as that sounds, they're going back to practices you just talked at the top of the hour about clamping down on people that are protesting against their government. People are fed up with their government in China, so we need to hold them accountable. And that hasn't happened, unfortunately, by Pelosi.
Oh, but they just recently started classifying dogs not as livestock. That happened since the pandemic started. Just point that out in terms of that country, communist government. Congressman Steve Scalise, good to see you.